welcome to another episode of Get a Good Start. Hey folks, I started getagoodstart.com to help other people, and one of the ways I can do that is to introduce you to resources that can help you be successful. The Growth Suite is one of those partners, and their mission is to provide you with the skill set, mindset, and tool set to increase your impact and income. Check out their free resources for Get a Good Start listeners over at thegrowthsuite.com/getagoodstart. Don't forget to visit getagoodstart.com for links to our guests and a list of action items that can help you get a good start. He is a business lawyer who runs his own legal and consulting practice, representing business owners, executives, and professionals with nearly 3 decades of experience. You can find out all about him at beinhakerlaw.com. Welcome to the show, Mitchell Beinhaker. How are you?
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you having me on the show.
No, it's great. I really appreciate it. And let's kick it right off. Certainly,
Sure.
Lawyers are procedural based, and success, I believe, is a series of procedures. And when you think about getting a good start, do you have a procedure to your life that gets you off to a good start every day?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have to walk the dogs at 6:30 in the morning because my wife won't do it. So I usually get up and I go downstairs and I have a cup of coffee and I check some emails for the day. I don't, if I ever respond to an email, they're scheduled. I don't send out emails early to clients because I don't want them to think that I'm all of a sudden online and they can respond at 6:30 in the morning. And, look at my schedule and see what the day brings. I do a little bit of that the night before as well. And then pack a lunch now because I don't really want to go to the Corona Cafe in the basement. And, I pack my own lunch and then I head to the office. Yesterday actually was the first time where I actually went out and saw people all day because I had to pick something up or drop this off or get something signed. But usually I'm in the office. I'm in a co-working space. So usually it's Zoom or phone calls that I'm dealing with. And it's a much, better, better use of my time.
Is there something that if you didn't do this thing every day, it's just going to start off not being such a great day?
No, I think that that's a total myth. I think if people set themselves up where they have to do something and they can't because, there's always little things that happen.
Right.
They're just, I know my day is going to be successful if I accomplish the things I'm trying to accomplish. But if it doesn't go in the order that I want it to, I don't sweat the small stuff.
I agree with you. I used to tell people, I tried to be a coffee drinker every morning. I kept forgetting to drink coffee, and other people like, if I don't have my coffee, my day's a mess. But
that is one thing though, Scott. I have left the house a couple of times with my coffee in the house and I forgot to I didn't have time to go back. That sets me off a little bit. And then I got to go to Dunkin' and pick up something. But so that may be the one vice that I have that I don't admit to.
But you overcame it, right? You stop at Dunkin'. So
man, I managed. The day still went on. If I didn't have the coffee, my wife's like, "You want me to bring the coffee to your office?" I said, "No, that's okay. You don't have to. I'll manage." And then whatever. Got to lunch, and then I had coffee at night. Whatever.
Hey, Mitch, you've had a very experienced career, and certainly, I admire you going through law school, taking the bar, doing those things. I don't think I could keep my head in a book long enough to get one of those things done. But
yeah, it's not as daunting as you think. But yeah.
But if I had another life, I might give it a whirl. But if you were able to go back right after law school, right after you passed the bar, to give yourself a piece of advice to help you start off a little bit better, what would that advice be to yourself?
Well, I probably wouldn't end up practicing law if I knew everything then that I know now. I'd probably be in business. I think law is a good education, but the practice of law is, has its shortcomings. I mean, I like practicing law, but if an opportunity came up for me to do something else that was exciting and lucrative, I'm not married to practicing law. So I might have gone a different route, getting involved with some people to start a business. And do stuff. But, back in those days, you come out of law school, you don't know you're going to practice to be a lawyer.
Right.
There was a book I remember circulating around, how to start your own law practice. And people were like, why would we read that book? Like, that's for losers. You can't get a job. But the truth of the matter is that 80 to 90% of us end up in like solo practices in the country, like corporate law, big law. Government is really not a big part of the profession. It just seems like it is when you live in like New York City.
Right.
So that's what I would do differently. Probably. I probably would not be a lawyer, but I think a legal background is a good base for what you do in business and stuff.
Yeah. Well, it cuts across all industries, right? I mean, I was in
Sure.
marketing and advertising for years, and certainly copyright law and those sort of things came into play um, when I was a marketing director for a bank,
Yeah.
compliance and all those sort of
Of
things.
course. Now, remember,
Um,
you don't learn any of that stuff in law school. Like,
Nothing,
nobody should believe that they're going to come out of law school and they'll be like more prepared for life. They're not,
right?
but you are prepared. You are more analytical. You are able to interact with courts and look at things and do some research and learn about the law better as you move, forward. So that's why it's a good education.
And typically a better writer. Honestly,
Typically, I was very a bad writer. So that's one of the reasons I went to law school. I felt I wasn't analytical enough. I wasn't a good writer. I'm, now writing briefs, writing contracts is I can do. I'm still not a good writer. I'm working on a book right now with a friend of mine. If it wasn't for him, it'd be blank. So,
well, I
still
admire.
pulling teeth.
Well, that's part of the journey to success, right? It's the journey, not the destination. When you finish that book, you're going to start writing another one because
I would hope not, but you're probably right.
well, because it's
Maybe I'll switch to like ebooks, like
there
little
you go.
sort of smaller things. I'll write on my blog. I got to get my blog started again,
Yeah,
that type of stuff.
So thinking about things we would and wouldn't do, every college student who graduates and gets a degree walks out the door, like myself and maybe like you, thought we knew it all and knew exactly where we were going. But
Yeah.
and unless you had a real mentor who told you the facts of life as you were exiting that door, you thought you knew it all. What's something that you would tell every graduating senior, if you could, about the hard truth about life as they enter the corporate world or the business world?
Yeah, I think as young people, we're all full of piss and vinegar and we're all excited and we've been, by drinking 24 hours a day and we survive that and we feel like we can tackle the world. I'm not saying I did this any differently, but I think that if you're young and you're a little open-minded, you should learn from and listen to and ask questions of people that have experience and have gone through the stuff. You're not going to get their experience. Some of it comes with time and life and things like that, but you will push the curve.
Mm-hmm.
If you get started in an industry or a business, find people that are successful once a month and have coffee with them and ask them, what did they succeed at? What did they fail at? What were their obstacles? What advice would they give you? And you will, you'll push that envelope as you go along. But there's a lot of people that come out and they're all like, they think that they're hitting the skids now out of college and they have to know everything and they got to do this and they got to do that. That's not life. You don't know everything. Coming to college is an exercise in thinking and learning to mature. It's not you don't come out of college ready for work. People right now, like with the pandemic, right? A lot of, even my son, he's in college, he's like, I don't feel like I'm learning anything. I said, are you doing well? Yeah, I'm doing very well. Okay, that's all that matters, because you're going to come out with a degree and you're going to get a decent job and you're going to get started and you're going to start to learn on the job. So if you're young, be open to it, read things, listen to things, be a student of life, like you hopefully were a student in college. Maybe you weren't. Maybe it was all booze and pot. I don't know, but you know what I mean? So it took me a long time, and a lot of and probably you too, and a lot of us, to become students of life. When I was in sales at the beginning, I got into motivational stuff, motivating and sales techniques.
Right.
And I would drive around and I would carry, in those days, cassette tapes in my car, popping them in, just listening to whatever I could listen to. I still do.
Right.
And the ones that I find that don't, they got stale. So if you really want to, make life rich and enjoy what you do and find your path, it's not going to happen like just by sitting around and going to work. You're going to have to seek it out. So listen to people.
That's exactly what, that was the impetus of this, of my podcast. After 30 years in the business, I really felt I kept a notebook of all the things I did well, the other people did well. And like when I was doing it, I had no idea why I was keeping this notebook, but it was to remind me. It was kind of like I was building a knowledge base before that was even
right.
a phrase.
Journaling is a great technique to keeping information. You can do it electronically now. They have these pads where you can write on. You don't need paper, whatever.
Yeah, and I used to write down mistakes I made and things I should have done and retrospective things. And, thinking about that and college students and the ones I talk to all the time, and I kind of pound this into their head, you're not thinking about it when you're 20 something years old about a will, about estate planning. Usually not until, like me, I had kids and had a house, had some kind of meager net worth, and said, I should think about what would happen to this. Now, coming around college, should college students be thinking about those sort of things?
Uh, Probably not in most cases. I mean, if they're getting married, they're buying a house, yeah, sure, they might want to have a will. Certainly, if they have children, they're going to want to have a will as they start to accumulate assets. It also varies from state to state. I'm in New Jersey, and the probate process in New Jersey is a fairly simple process.
Mhm.
It's more complicated if you don't have a will. But if you don't really have assets, and the only thing you have is the start of a 401k at work, and your mom's the beneficiary because you don't have a spouse or anything, you probably don't need a will. You should have a healthcare directive, which is like a living will, or medical power of attorney that states your wishes if you were to become incapacitated or terminally ill or something like that. You may need a power of attorney if you have somebody like a parent or something that needs to um, act on your behalf if you can't act. Those are the two things. I have this ebook actually, and I'm happy to offer it to your listeners. It's called A Parent Survival Guide to Sending Your Kids to College. And what happens is you send your kids to college and they're 17 and they hit 18, and now they're protected by the privacy rules. So you can't get access to medical information. You can't get access to the bursar, ironically enough. So you pay them $50,000. They still don't want to talk to you. So
Yep.
they have to follow the rules. So you need to get HIPAA releases from your adult children. You should get a healthcare, directive in place, powers of attorney, all that type of stuff. And I have a package that I do but very often the parents find that out in the middle of college
Right.
when their kid gets sick and he's in the health center and the doctor cannot talk to you without their authorization. So as you get out in the world, you want to make sure you have those systems in place for things that you need. Does it matter if you died, you have no assets? No. But does it matter if you're in a hospital and you need somebody to be your healthcare representative? Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing your parents need to do is apply to court to become your healthcare representative. Same with a power of attorney.
Right. Is that ebook on your website?
No, it's probably not on my website.
Okay.
But I can give you a link to it for the
Yeah,
show
give me a
notes.
link to it so I could put it on the blog, because I think that's an important thing. I certainly
Sure.
found that out the hard way. My son's going to Penn State in June, and he's starting in the summer, and we just had a problem just looking at the financial the FAFSA information. They're like, yeah, we
Oh
can't
my
talk.
God.
We can't talk to you about it. What?
Right. No, that's another thing. You got to have his
Yeah.
login, your login. They got to give you
Yeah.
permission, this and that.
Oh, it's
I'll tell
crazy.
you, Scott, I do this for a living. And my kid went to Indiana. He's at IU right now. And he's young. So he was 17. I think he actually turned 18 or maybe he was 17. He turned 18 at the end of his freshman year. I didn't have that stuff in place. And
Right.
he got sick. They had this I know what it was. They had this mold outbreak in the dorms.
Mhm.
These kids were sick. They didn't even know why. So he goes to the health center, really sick. And he's like 18 at this point. So I call up and like an idiot, I'm like, oh shit, you're right. I can't get access to his information. So I had to take care of it. So all my wife's friends freaked out too. And they brought their kids over during the pandemic in the backyard to sign things. And yeah, you don't think about it. It's like the shoemaker forgets to put, he's got holes in his shoes. So
Yeah, they didn't even care. You're paying the bills or nothing. They didn't want.
no, because
they
it's a
can't
federal
t-
law.
You can't talk to you. Yeah,
Right. Correct.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that's something you definitely, as a young person, need to take care of as you go out in the world. And then, like you said, if you start developing assets, if you invest in a business, if you have a spouse, if you have children, even if you don't have children and you're married, it just makes it easier on your spouse if you pass away. So, because I'll tell you one thing, if you die and you don't have a will, there's a good chance that your spouse might have to post a bond in order to administer your estate, because the court might say, well, maybe there's a creditor out there that Mitch owes money to. And you can avoid those costs if you have a will. So
Good advice. Being a lawyer, being a business lawyer, dealing with all these people is definitely a relationship-driven career.
it is.
You've entered into and have been successful at for many, many years. What would you consider is the most valuable business relationship building tool that you've used over the years?
And you're not asking me just as a lawyer, but just in general, if you own a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. I always say networking. So personal contacts and the network that you build is very important. But the one step that people don't take because I always felt like the marketing, the postings, the social media, it all supports the networking in the most case, right? Where most of us
Right.
don't do business nationally, we do business locally. So people meet you, you're referred to me, and you're like, yeah, I know Mitch. I just saw his podcast over here. And it all kind of supports the contacts that you make. But one of the mistakes I think people make, and some of the people I know do this well, but is they don't build a contact list. They don't build a keep in touch program. They don't build a mailing list. So do I get business from my podcast because it goes up on social media? A little bit, but I do get a lot of business because I have 2,700 people on my mailing list, and they get notifications about the podcast, about the survival guide that I put out, about services that I have for my clients that are available to other people, all that kind of stuff, because they subscribe to my email list, because I met them and I added them to my email list. And I said, hey, not only do I send them a drip campaign to introduce them to my firm, which is the part that people leave out. They meet you and then they go back and that's it.
Right.
But I also say, listen, I've added you to my mailing list. You certainly can unsubscribe at any time, but I want to teach you about what I do and how I can help you. And that's the step that people kind of leave out when it comes to business development. Let's use that as a category, right?
Yeah, sure.
And there's a very good book, by the way. It's called Referral of a Lifetime. It's a parable book about a story about a woman who's kind of experiencing through these different people she meets along the way about building a keep in touch program with your clients, with your customers, with your colleagues, and so forth.
Yeah, I call it I call it rotating 5-minute meeting. And what it is, it's a 5-minute meeting I put on my calendar, and I utilize a notes section of the calendar invite, or I put an attachment of people who I've talked to, and on a rotating 3-month basis or something. If I haven't talked to them and that meeting reminder comes up, because it's like 9 o'clock to 9:05, send it, touch base with Mitch. That I'll go, oh yeah, I haven't talked to him in 3 months. I should drop him a line. And it's a great way, even if it's just an email, it's a great way just to touch base with that core. I call them the core group 100, because you usually have 100 people who you talk to throughout the year. And those are people you should probably keep in touch with, because they're your current resources of that time. And you're building relationships with them, and some come in and out of that circle. But I call it the 5-minute meeting. It works really well for me. And some of my students have started to deploy that, and they said it works well. But absolutely, building a great list of your contacts is important, because if you don't have it, if you don't remember who they are, where you met them, they get lost in a shuffle, and you're always searching for that next resource, right?
Absolutely. Well, not only that, and I differentiate between what you're saying. What you're talking about is what I call a hot list.
Right.
And I think that's important. I have 25, 30 people that I keep in touch with. Hey, how you doing? Let's grab coffee, whatever. But also, I don't know everybody on my mailing list, obviously 2,700 people, but I knew the first 250 or 500 of them, and it grew from there. But I think you really want to make sure that you keep in touch with people, that you're putting things out there, that you're top of mind with them. Because I can't tell you, Scott, how many times somebody contacts me for something, and I'm like, well, I don't do that, but I know a consultant that does it. And I can't remember for the life of me who the consultant is.
Right.
And I just met with them like 2 months ago, but because they didn't keep in touch with me, I've met 27,000 other people since that time. I can't think of it. So it's very important for people to know that if you don't keep yourself in front of people on a regular basis, so they know you're alive, so they know your business is still going, they will forget you, because they didn't like you, not because they don't like your service, because they are bombarded just like you are with constant information, second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And that's really important to recognize, that you got to cut your way through the noise out there to hopefully, it doesn't always work, right? Hopefully you're the guy that comes up where they say, oh yeah, no, I just heard from Mitch yesterday. Oh yeah. And they reach out to me, and I get contacted every day for business, just because I'm keeping in touch with people.
Yeah. And I found from a personal standpoint that being able to refer people or be a resource for others has been a big deal. And one of the things that made me more efficient at doing that is, again, in the notes field of my contacts, I put 2 or 3 words that I can search for, right? Lawyer would be one for you.
Yeah, that's
estate planning would be
comment.
Good. And if somebody says, hey, do you know anyone who does, estate planning? I would type in my contact, estate planning. I might have talked to you for a while. But
it pops up, right?
It pops up, right? I'm like, yeah, cool. This guy, Mitch.
That's
He's
good.
Great.
That's good advice for people, because you can't If you can't remember, but you have it that they do this, then you
Right.
type it in and you'll find them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I give you another tip I give all the students in that same notes field. Put in where you met them the first time,
Yeah.
because
Like who referred you, where
yeah,
you were. Yeah.
because
Because you
now
can then say, hey, remember when we grabbed coffee at Starbucks,
exactly,
sat on the
exactly.
highway? Yeah. Right. Now it's more personal. And then they're like, wow,
He
Scott
remembers.
remembers that.
Yeah, it's great.
I
It's
don't even remember Scott's last name,
That's right.
So
It's an easy thing to do. You know, I'm sure throughout your years helping businesses with their legal wranglings and things they have to handle while they do their business, you probably have a short list of mistakes that they make when starting a business. And if
a
we were
short list. I don't think it's short.
well, let's try to relegate it to like the top few
Sure.
mistakes you've witnessed. People who are starting a new business, they make a legal mistake they might make that, you know, I get out of college and let's say I graduate from law school and I'm going to start my own practice.
Yeah.
What are a couple things I really need to pay mind to, because these are mistakes you see over and over again and you're like, boy, you should have did this when you started your business, kind of thing.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, so I'll give you a broad category that's kind of pervasive in all of the mistakes.
Sure.
And then we'll talk more specifically. Okay. First thing, and I speak about this all the time, is that people in general, don't put things in writing. Okay. So when you're starting out your business, unless it's just a hobby and you're joking around about it, you have to be formal about what you do. Okay. Let's start with a business plan, right? So you have to write a business plan, and it doesn't mean, look, I have a simple template, 4 parts, you can do it. Doesn't mean that it's got to be bound up with graphs and charts and color. It may even be electronic, but don't have things on a napkins all over your office. Have some formality, because like you had said with journaling, you will go back to that and look at your ideas and are you on that path? Maybe the path didn't work out. We had to pivot. And is it working? So that's the first thing. Then once you're getting started and you're going to actually act in commerce, you're going to do business with people where you have liability, you should set up a company, an LLC, a corporation. I'm much more partial to LLCs these days, and follow the formalities that are required of these entities to protect you from a liability standpoint. Of course, you should have insurance and all that type of stuff, but you got to get started, and that's how you do it. You set up a company. Don't be working as a sole proprietor, even if you're a consultant, without any liability protection. Okay. Then, as you're starting to do business with people, you have a partner, you have customers you deal with, vendors, you do that in writing, right? And a lot of people don't do that. The business gets started, it gets away from them. And they're like, yeah, I really need to do that in writing, because if you come to a lawyer because you have a problem, what can we do about this person who hasn't paid me? The first thing I'm going to ask you is, well, what does your contract say? And if you say, well, I don't really have a contract, I now have to deal with text messages, emails, and the phone conversations that you can't remember what you said to try and deal with this issue. And it's going to be a mess. So you need to do things in writing. And a lot of people are reluctant to do that. Well, I don't know, how do I present that to my customers? It seems so salesy if I give them a contract. Well, the state government, the federal government, the IRS, the Division of Taxation, they all require that you follow their rules. They all require that the courts. So if you're not comfortable talking to your clients about your pricing, for example, because you don't want to put something in front of them that they sign and say, listen, this isn't refundable, and all the issues and details you want to follow, right? You better get comfortable with it, because if something happens, you don't go to court. Let's use a will, for example, right? You don't die and your spouse goes to the judge and says, well, yeah, I was talking to Mitch last week and he wants to do this, and appoint this person to do that. And they go, oh, that's great. Okay. It doesn't work that way. If you don't have a will, you're subject to different rules. So it's the same thing in business. If you're going to play with the adults, you have to act like an adult. And because other people will hold you to that. If somebody sues you, you get into litigation for your business firm, whatever, and a good business attorney, a litigator, I told you I don't litigate, gets involved. The first thing he's going to request is all your corporate records to see, are you following the rules? Right. Or are you not following the rules? And you're going to be exposed. So you got to put things in writing. So if you start, the first step is write a business plan. Write down what this thing is. Who do you need to be involved in the business? Maybe just you right now. What's the market look like? What's your marketing? And then the financials that go with it. What does it really cost to produce this product or service? And what costs do you want to incur in the future? The best people I know that operate their business and have a business plan and follow the rules, they know exactly how many customers they need, how many accounts they need before they add new staff, new personnel, and what those people are going to do. They are sharp with how they operate the business. That's probably the first thing. Then the next thing is, if you don't have a partner, you probably don't need an operating agreement unless you're borrowing money or something. But if you do have a partner, absolutely do not do that on a handshake.
Right.
Because the day will come when they want out of the business, or they didn't tell you about something, and you got to break up the company, and now you're arguing about everything, who put in what, and who's entitled to what, and why you did more work than I did, you weren't there, and it won't work. It just won't work. And on top of that, well-intended people remember things completely differently.
Right.
Right. Not the people that want to take advantage of you. Your friend who is fighting with you because he remembers exactly what you talked about, and you're like, that is not what we talked about. We said this.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably both wrong, by the way, but that's the problem with memory. But the courts and the government and all kinds of other agencies treat us like we have perfect memories, and we have to have perfect memories. We don't. So therefore, you better have things in writing. So that's the first thing. And then as your business starts to grow, you deal with things like, proper insurance coverage. I find a lot of business owners get started. They're like, do I really need insurance? Yeah, you need a basic business owner's policy. And if you're doing something that involves food, liquor, whatever, there are municipalities where you need permission to do things, and you need licenses, and you got to, if you have a dog, people are surprised they got to get their dog licensed. Yeah, you have to get a dog license. We have a health department. Your dog bites somebody, they want to know. So, and you can get a fine for that. So that's the next step. Put your insurance in place, make sure you're protected, figure out what you need, what you don't need, what you can wait on, and then take it from there. You have employees, start to build a handbook, what they should be doing. A lot of companies, what happens is they grow, their employees they were in the right place to start with, and they end up in the wrong place later on, or they're not the right people for the growth of the company or whatever.
So really, if you're going to start your own business, document, write it down, and make sure you're covered liability wise with insurance.
Yep.
And seek out someone like yourself to help you guide you through the process. Because I can tell you, every dime I've spent on lawyers, on accountants, on tax attorneys, whoever I needed to, was worth every dime, because they keep you out of trouble. They keep it, you may think it's a lot of money initially, but it's really pennies on a dollar when
it'll cost you much more later on. And look, you can't replace the 29 years of experience that I have and the hundreds and thousands of transactions I've handled. I draft a contract and I know things that I'm looking for that you don't have the experience to put in there. You don't think of these things, why you would put something in there that says that this contract was drafted by your counsel, and any ambiguities in the contract don't hold it against me, because the courts will do that. There's an ambiguity in contract and you drafted it and not the other guy, they're going to rule in the other guy's favor unless it says something else in the contract. People don't think about that because they don't have the experience.
Mitch, I want to thank you. And for all the listeners, so you don't have to think about these lawyer questions and this legal advice that he's given us. Seek him out at beinhakerlaw.com. It's going to be in the blog, the link to it. Mitch, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. I really appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for having me, Scott.